So we're continuing the series looking at the bandhas, and if you want to know about the benefits of the bandhas, probably the best video to go to is the Mula Bandha video, because I talk a lot about the what bandhas are and what the benefits of bandhas are, and so on in that video. What we didn't look at in that video are precautions for the bandhas, and because we were doing Mula Bandha, which is the pelvic floor lock, there aren't really any precautions for that, because having a strong pelvic floor is going to be a benefit to everybody, and there would be no reasons for not wanting to have a pelvic floor strength, although the only precaution perhaps that I should mention in line with that is that if you do too many pelvic floor contractions, and if you hold it for too long, and if you get really into that practice, you can cause constipation, and so that would be perhaps one of the reasons to avoid getting too overly strong in the pelvic floor. But that's really not going to happen to that many people. We tend to be dysfunctional in the strength of our pelvic floor, but then again, there's some people that might really go for it, overdo it, and end up not being able to defecate properly. So tone is always important, so muscles should be both strong and stretchy, and that combination of strength and stretchiness equals good tone. So a toned pelvic floor rather than a slack pelvic floor or an overly tight pelvic floor. Alright, so we're now looking at Uddiyana Bandha, so we're moving up to the abdominal lock. Now, there are some very important precautions for this part of the practice of yoga. Firstly, to say that you should do it on an empty stomach. If you're pregnant, you shouldn't do it. If you've got high blood pressure, you shouldn't do it. If you've got any intestinal disorders, you shouldn't do it. If you've got hernia, you shouldn't do it. If I think of any others while we're going through it, I'll mention them. Although there are lots and lots of benefits for the Uddiyana Bandha abdominal lock. Will really tone your transversus abdominal muscles, your deep horizontal muscle that wraps it around the waist horizontally, so the muscle fibres are horizontal muscle fibres in that direction, and then connects in lumbar fascia towards the back of the body. So all of that gets pulled in, contracted and strengthened, and perhaps this is one of the muscles in the body that you really can't be too strong in. I said, strength and stretch equals tone, but really this one just wants to be strong. It needs to be strong to support your internal organs, to support your lumbar spine, and to just hold your posture really well. So very invigorating, very stimulating, and if you haven't got any of the aforementioned issues for non-practice and precautions and prohibitions, then this is a fantastic thing to do. Also, it involves holding the breath, so you shouldn't hold your breath, just as a general rule if you have heart conditions and so on. So very important to mention that. The other thing to say is that at any point, if you get uncomfortable doing this practice, you must stop and you must listen to yourself and decide to just take a break from it. And I would say build up gradually, and then when you get adept at doing this, then do sort of maybe 2 or 3 practice rounds and then a very, very strong final round. But, you know, sometimes with these really intense practices, once you've got the technique and you know how to do it, it's probably not to overdo it. They are intense, they are strong, and you'll get the benefits from just doing it on a regular basis. So do absolutely make it part of your yoga routine. And the reason that we're going through the bandhas in this way is because before we go into the staged approach to pranayama, you're going to need to know how to perform the bandhas, because the stages of pranayama will include breath retention with bandha practice. Okay, so lots of different ways of practicing Uddiyana Bandha. I'm going to do it from sitting and I'm going to do it from standing, and you'll probably need to see a bit more of my body to do this. So let's just remove some layers. So from a sitting position, we'll just do a few deep breaths. And it would be important to look at the intra-abdominal breathing practice that's on one of the other videos. As this will be an exercise that involves holding your breath out, it's really important that you're really oxygenated to begin with. And this can only be really properly done on the exhalations. Let's try a held exhale, just using the intra-abdominal pressure. So if you like to do this holding your nose with your fingers, you can, or just do it in the same way without holding the nose. I'll show you both methods. So take a deep breath in, empty, so you try to empty the breath and then use the respiratory muscles when you hold your nose to pull. It's as though you're trying to breathe in really firmly, but of course if you're holding your nose you can't breathe in, so it causes suction here. So take some easy breaths and then practice another round. Okay, so that's a very light Uddiyana Bandha, but it gives you some of the sensation that you need to create the full abdominal lock. So the full lock, I'm going to just lean into my knees with my arms and slightly flex my spine. And I'm going to take some deep breaths, and then on the exhalation I'll do the full bandha, and you can do it with me or you can watch. So that's the seated variation. The standing variation, I'm also going to do Kapalabhati breathing for this because I find this really, really effective. And if you want to watch the video that I made on Kapalabhati, do have a look at that if you're not quite sure of that technique. So I'm not going to go into the technique of Kapalabhati now, but refer to the other video if you are unsure. So for this we're going to do a few Kapalabhati breaths, and I'll also show you the woodchopper version. So I'm going to stand with the hands on the knees and the spine. I feel a little bit like a silverback gorilla here, bending your knees a bit. And we'll take a deep breath in and we'll do some Kapalabhati breaths out. So I'll do that practice again in a moment, but I'll just explain what happened. So Kapalabhati gives you a bit of gaseous exchange in the brain. So you build up a lot of carbon dioxide that opens up the airways, and then you exhale the air out, and then with a breath retention on the exhale you pull into your Uddiyana Bandha, so create that suction in the abdomen. And that means that the flood of any carbon dioxide that's still in the bloodstream and in the cells and in the muscles then gets back into the lungs. And so when you breathe in, you replenish the oxygen and breathe. And so I held my breath in for a while, and I feel very comfortable to do that because the heart and the brain have been slightly starved of oxygen, so that kind of just holding the breath in helps to get the oxygen back to those vital organs. And then you feel very light with the breath. The breath feels very sort of almost like you don't really need to breathe because you're flooded back with oxygen. So we'll do another one like that. So it's a few Kapalabhati breaths, a held exhale, full Uddiyana Bandha suction in the belly. When you need to breathe in, and don't hold for too long, as I said at the beginning, just stop when you need to. If it doesn't feel right, anytime it doesn't feel comfortable, you must just stop. And then when you breathe in, hold your breath in for a moment. Center your awareness at the Ajna eyebrow center, Trataka, internal Trataka at the eyebrow center, and see how you feel. And then just notice what happens to your breath when you start breathing out again. Just breathe naturally and just watch the natural rhythm of your breath and see how it feels. Okay, let's do one more Kapalabhati, Uddiyana Bandha practice. Sometimes just get yourself a bit limbered. Okay. So quite often you're going to feel lightheaded when you do that practice, and that's good as long as you don't feel faint and fall over. Right, so next practice then is the wood chopper. I'm not going to do any more of these because they're really powerful. So after the wood chopper, I'll do one to demonstrate. I'll do another one so that you can follow through. But I feel really energized from doing that practice already, and so you don't need to over egg it. All right, and I've got creaky floorboards there, so let's not be farting, by the way. All right, let's loosen everything off. Feet quite wide. This is the equestrian pose. It's quite a great pose in and of itself. There's lots of things that we can do from this basic posture. This is a very much you could do lots of visualizations with this as well. So if you imagine an obstacle in front of you, something that you need to eliminate from your life, please don't let this be a person, but perhaps something that person represents, or something that's just stopping you from excelling forward in your life and in your goals, in your dreams and your desires. So let's imagine we've got an axe. So I'm using Matangi Mudra here, so interlacing the fingers, pointing the index fingers forward, and then into the equestrian pose. I'll do one and then I'll explain what I've done. So breathe in. So with that practice, what we did was breathed in and did a bit of a kind of wiggle around, and that's to just really get as I was breathing in, to get the breath to really get into all the spaces in the lungs. And then we did a whoosh, and we used the axe to cut through the obstacle that might be in front of you. And I whooshed all the air out, and at the end of that exhalation I did a very strong Uddiyana Bandha lift, so suction. So it's a feeling of try to breathe in without breathing in, so you get the suction in the belly. Held that for a bit, for as long as I felt it was comfortable to hold it for, and then when I was ready to breathe in, I stood up, a little bit of head rushiness, which is actually really pleasant, in fact. I held my breath in with internal awareness that the Ajna, Akasha, Tratika, eyebrows, center, spiritual space. And then the exhalation came, and then I just took a few moments to notice how I was breathing and how I felt. So we'll do one more, and that will be really enough for me for today. So prepare, take a breath in and out, and when you're ready, interlace the hands. So I'm just changing the interlace to a kind of familiar clasp. Start to get into your equestrian pose, and then we'll breathe in. Okay, so with any of the bandha practices, always just take a few moments in your usual way at the end of your practice to just really allow that to feel absorbed into the body. With the Uddiyana Bandha, probably more than any of the other bandha practices, if you do them as individual practices, you get very, very instant and direct effects from that practice. It's incredibly strong. So do spend a bit of time to just, because you've locked, you've really sucked in, pulled everything in and up, and then you've released. And so that's that whole thing of blocking the prana, redirecting the prana, releasing and letting it flood into the whole body-mind system. So do give yourself plenty of time now to just rest, relax and observe the effects of that practice.